Darren, you may read the announcement.
Okay. Hello, my name is Harold Berger, and I am the Chair of the Water and Sewer Rate Structure Committee. Welcome to the May 20th, 2025 meeting. In accordance, with the open meeting law, at the beginning of the meeting, I must disclose to attendees whether the meeting is being recorded. This meeting is being broadcast via Zoom and is being recorded for publication, later viewing, and administrative purposes. Also, after notifying the chair, any person may make a video or audio recording of the meeting or may transmit the meeting through any medium, subject to reasonable requirements of the chair as to the number, placement, and operation of equipment used so as to not interfere with the conduct of the meeting. Please let me know now so I can make that announcement as well. Thank you.
I don't see anybody else. So,
Okay, motion to call meeting to order.
second.
All in favor? Meeting called to order. And first is just approving the
Minutes on March 18th. Mr. Chairman, I did notice on page 4 of the minutes, the third paragraph from the bottom, there's one technical correction where it reads $12.56. It should read $12.59. And the minutes are in order as the members are so ready. You can approve with the amendment.
Motion to approve the minutes.
Second. Mike Retzky is not with us today. Karis, did you have anything you want to speak on behalf of Michael?
Yeah, I think maybe the item that keeps coming up is the water restrictions. So I can certainly speak to that. The state today ended up meeting again, or yesterday met, the Drought Management Task Force met. Once again, Region 1, which is the region that we are in, which is the southeast region of Massachusetts. Needham is the second most northern town in that southeast region, was continued at a level 1 emergency drought restriction, which is where we have been since the beginning of the season. Largely it's due to a stream flow issue in the south, even further southern part of the state, but because of how they have everything districted, we are required to comply within that space. So we are still on a restriction in which it allows all hand watering. This is the only level of restriction that allows hand watering. Level 2 through 4 does not allow that either. And the so you can hand water whenever you want. And then irrigation is limited to Sundays before, I believe it's 9 o'clock and after 5. So we are still under a restriction. It seems like the state is meeting a little bit more frequently, I think in response to concerns that the restriction itself is, it's hard for people to take it seriously when they see the abundance of rain that we've had. I would say given the cool temperatures and the abundance of rain, there's probably less of a need to water anyways, but I know that has been a concern where we've received feedback from the community, and I just wanted to provide that update.
Thank you.
So, Mr. Chair, I'll just move right into the primary purpose, and that's to talk about rates for next year. So I will just walk you through what all the documents are in the packet first. The first page is, of course, what the current rates are. And at the very bottom, the average single family home based upon 12,000 cubic feet of usage, their annual water bill is $1,930 a year. The next page are the rates for monthly billers, which is the same, just different consumption levels. The miscellaneous rates that we have in place, there's no request to change any of those. The next page are the community stormwater mitigation fees. This we're moving into our second year. And keeping with what was stated when the fees were first implemented, there will be no change to rates, so there's nothing to look at this time. The next page is just informational. It's showing the communities that are nearby Needham that are members of the MWRA and receive both sewer and water services from the MWRA. I show the communities that have a basic service fee, basic sewer fee, what their bottom step or what we refer to as step one rate is, what their top step rate, or in Needham, that would be step 4 rate is for water, what the range of consumption is for step 1 usage in cubic feet. And I show the same thing for sewer. The step 1 range, the number of steps, the bottom step rate, and the top step rate. The next page is the standard outlook forecast that we look at in terms of setting the rate, in terms of what we're looking at for FY 26 for operating expenses, the projections for 27 and 28. We did discuss these back in March, and they are slightly higher. In the case of water, much higher. But what has changed is the MWRA preliminary assessment, which back in March, we were level dollaring at 1,200,000, is just on $1,776,000 is the expected assessment. That's the preliminary assessment. The final assessment won't be known until the state completes its budget process. The indirect cost, estimate has been lowered by over $100,000. The result is the budget estimate for 2026 is higher than it was not to be in March. And again, it's all because of the MWRA water usage, which was higher, and in part because of irrigation last year. We rely upon the MWRA water to use at a time when the demand exceeds our ability to meet the demand, or if there is parts of the system that the tanks or our pumps need to be taken offline for maintenance or repair. But generally, it's irrigation that drives the town's usage of MWRA water. The next page is showing how we try to determine what would be the revenue target that rates have to adjust. The first thing is we look at is what is the operating appropriation average forecast for the next 3 years. And that averages to 8,051,000 and change. If you just turn back the page, you'll see that number in the bottom right-hand corner. What that represents is the estimated budget of 26, 27, and 28 averaged. What we subtract from that operating expense is fixed revenue that we expect to collect, $700,000. What that represents is the basic service fees that are charged for water service and for secondary service, and then estimated service fees that are collected during the course of the year. We have an allowance for uncollectibles of 0.75%. And that's $60,383. We which shows the amount that we want revenue to be raised from rates of 7,411,000, which we round to the nearest 1,000. So we reduce 444. So the revenue target is $7,411,000. So that's what needs to be raised. The next important factor is what's the volume of water that's estimated to be sold? Yeah, in order to determine the rate to be charged. Which, the estimate of billable water is based upon the 5-year average of water usage, both for the primary and secondary. And that's where we get to the 96,848,600 cubic feet of primary volume, and then for secondary or basically irrigation, 39,310,000. That's then gives you a simple math equation, the 136 million cubic feet divided by the 7,411. That means that every 100 cubic feet costs $5.44. Back in March, when we were talking, we were looking at a rate of $5.05. Things have changed, as of course, the MWRA assessment is higher. And not unexpected, the estimated water volume is down based upon 24 data.
In water volume, water usage has been declining for a number of years now, right?
Sewer has been declining, water's been up and down. This is the volatility, particularly for irrigation. The next page is the same exercise as sewer, the same situation. It's slightly higher than what we were discussing in March. Again, it's the MWRA assessment. It was, we were assuming a 3.5% increase in the MWRA assessment. The preliminary assessment from the MWRA that just came out is a 4.7% increase. So, just like the water, the indirect cost that estimate has been reduced from that which was presented in March. So that bottom right-hand corner on that sheet, you're seeing $12,107,563. That's the 3-year average based on 26, 27, 28. Turn to the next page. So that's where that figure of $12,107,563 comes from. Plus the fixed rate revenue, and the fixed rate revenue in this case is the basic service fee for sewer. At $325,000. An approximate $800,000 appropriation from the general fund to the sewer enterprise fund. That's not a subsidy, that's to pay for the drains program. As a reminder, we budget for the drains program in the sewer enterprise fund because from accounting it's less work, as well as the people who do the work, that work are in the sewer enterprise fund. But it is paid for from the tax levy because that's the easiest way to make the comparison. If we were to get out of the water and sewer business, spin it off, sell it to a private entity, the street drains and stuff is still the responsibility of the town because the street drains come with the road infrastructure. So town meeting appropriates money to the sewer enterprise fund and represent those costs. Just like with the water, we have an allowance for doubtful collections, 0.75%, $90,807. Gives us the adjusted amount to collect, 11,073,370. Same thing, round to the nearest thousand, 11,073,000 as the revenue target shown here. The estimated billable volume, we're using not the 5-year average or 3-year average, but last year. What we're building FY 24, because as noted, the volume is billable volume is decreasing every single year. if we were to use the 5-year average or 3-year average, we would clearly be overestimating, because the trend is in reverse.
That's not getting up the water.
No.
Why is this, we know Coca-Cola's been gone for a while with at least the bottling operations.
Yes, actually, this is not going to affect Coca-Cola or
But
anything.
yeah, what's going on with this? Why these steady declines?
Yeah. Say completely why, just somewhat anecdotal, certainly. As commercial operations remodel, they are becoming much more, water, efficient in the usage, so they don't have as much billable water, hence not as much billable sewer. Certainly homeowners, certainly all new construction have to comply with the building code, which low flow toilets, more monitoring systems, so just the overall lower use, or more importantly, less waste. Less leaks in the system and such.
Is it a rise in secondary meters too? Is
No,
that
this-
material now?
That used to have a major impact, but we're not getting as many secondary meters as
Got
we use. But yes, that does have an impact every time someone
Yeah.
does install a secondary meter, where they used to only have the primary meter.
Mhm.
And the primary meter is basically charging the sewer, that is now they've diverted some of the flow, then yes, that would also impact. Billable sewer.
What has been the, roughly speaking, average annual decline in the?
Couple percent.
So it's
Could be.
low single percentage.
Yeah.
Okay, and so estimated billable volume for fiscal 24, then you're thinking though for the budget, I'm just throwing out a number, whether it's 5, 4, 3. These numbers anticipate same rate of decline and,
This is assuming level. That consumption, I mean, this is a good time for me to jump to this. That consumption may be the same for FY 26 versus FY 24. John. And I'm sorry, I didn't get you.
Michelle.
Michelle?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, Michelle.
I don't know, but that's okay.
Yeah.
Out of contact.
Yes, it is, yeah.
It's a long day.
Yeah.
No worries.
this is great tape, by the way. This is like always I ask questions that. Yeah,
That's great. So this is apples to apples comparing, we have 9 months of data for fiscal 25. So we compare the first 9 months of 25 to the first 9 months of billable and 2 years since 2019. And again, this is showing that so far for the first 9 months of 25, we're actually doing better than we were in 24. 24 had a significant decline of 15%. And that's on the
very
one.
wet year, if I remember, last year in the summer in particular.
And that would have been the summer of 23, and yes, the summer of 23 was wet. Summer of 24 was deceptively tried to that's why consumption of secondary use is out 24%. Everything that Karis is referring to is gonna impact us next year.
Yeah.
For fiscal 26. The sewer, looking there is sewer volume is for the first 9 months is up 0.9%, so basically flat. And another reason why I'm thinking that we can just use the 24 flow as our basis to determine FY 26 budget. Whereas 3 years running, the consumption, the billable consumption was declining in the first 9 months.
Well, if we ask this question, but in terms of customer accounts, are they slowly growing for both water and sewer? Just kind of flat.
Flat.
Yeah.
Flat. basically flat. So anyways, that's why I am comfortable recommending to the committee that we use the FY 24 bill volume of sewer for our FY 26 estimate.
And you said water was a 5-year average, is that what you're using?
Yeah, the 5 years,
Okay.
we generally always use the 5-year average. We had to tweak things because of the weird thing that COVID was doing, but we're now far enough removed from the COVID years that's not having a discernible effect on averages. The and as well, conversely, if we were seeing a year after year substantial growing increase in billable consumption, that would be a justification, not the 5, but maybe a shorter period of time, but that has not been an issue in a while. So the next thing is trying to put into perspective our customers paying the cost of the service they're receiving. And this is one that I always make a reference to. We know for FY 26, based upon the assumption, what we will have for billable volume, what we have to raise for money, that we have to generate $5.44 for every 100 cubic feet of water use. Our current rate structure at step 1 is $3.37 per 100 cubic feet for the first 600. So they're paying $2.07 less than full cost. Or in other words, is they have a subsidy of 38.1%. Step 2, the rate is $3.61 versus the $5.44 minimum rate. There's a $1.83 subsidy or a 33.6% subsidy. Now you just take those 2 steps together. They represent together 70% of all the billed volume. So right there, 70% of our total volume of primary water use is paying less than the cost of delivering and providing the water. The next step, step 3, is also a subsidy at $4.53 and 91 cents per 100 cubic feet subsidy, or 16.7%. That represents about 5% of the total billed consumption. Top step is paying a premium that they try to help make up some of those lost dollars. They represent about 20% of total billed use and represents about 5.6% of total customers. And of course, the secondary meters, the irrigation rates we charge more than cost because it's more of a want than a need. No subsidy. That also helps provide some subsidy to the step 1, step 2, and step 3 rates. Now, of course, if you have a portable irrigation sales, that's where you get yourself into the town gets itself into a revenue shortfall. The sewer, the same situation, $13.08 is the break-even point. And all 3 steps are the customers being charged less than cost. In this case, step 1 and step 2 represents 79% of all the billed sewer is less than cost. And at the step 4 rate, which represents about 17% of the total billed volume, and represents 5% of the total number of customers that are actually in that rate.
I'm sorry, Dave, do you mind repeating that last one?
Step 4, about 17% of the volume is billed at step 4. But represents only 4% of the total customer.
So, I know we've discussed pretty much every meeting is subsidies and how it's more or less a legacy of all the stuff, but it's the extreme nature of it. I get the sense that there's more focus on, from the communications and everything, but on Brett being a little faster. Is that fair to say in terms of reducing and or eliminating some of these subsidies?
Yes, I mean, from a public policy and by state regulation requires water to be on an inclining block rate. So we always have that situation that they have to be charging more per unit as the number of units are always up. As well as the theory is that they're trying to promote conservation, so charging less for the beginning use is a public policy, trying to encourage less use, although if everybody was using 600 cubic feet or less per quarter and nobody was going above that, then the cost would have to go up to $5.44 even for step one, because you still have to cover the cost of the operation. But you're always gonna have people in higher steps. But we cannot support having a subsidy as a step three rate. And we really should be looking at reducing the subsidy amount for step two. We can't do that in one fall swoop. It's just would be too much of an increase. Or in other words, step one, you would, in order to get to $5.44, you would have to raise the rate of 62%. Step two, 51%, and then step three, 20%. So clearly those are percentages that are not doable in a year, or desirable. But I think with an idea that over a multi-year, 3 to 4 years, if we can stress that we have a rate structure that would have step one for water, the primary water use not to be no more than 20%. So knowing that when you have to do more than a higher rate percentage increase at step one of the other rates, it would be when the subsidy was once we get to 20%, would prevent from going over 20%. And at step two would be one of not more than a 10% subsidy. And then step three and step four would not have subsidies. In fact, they would be helping to subsidize the step one and step two. Conversely, with sewer, small population and all, I would envision step one subsidy be no more than 10%. Step two, no more than 5%, and again, no subsidy at step three or step. These would be things that we discussed with the select board actually public hearing.
And I know utilities often do this. Have you ever proposed multi-year, like a multi-year rate package at one time? Is that just not something that the town has historically entertained?
We've done it a couple of times in the long past, but of late, well, starting with the COVID year, looking at a multi-year rate structure, the board wasn't interested because of the volatility associated with COVID. But I think I'm raising the point as a discussion point with the select board. We would be looking at 1 year rates, but it's a recommendation to the board for a rate for 26, but seeing their risks, seeing the board to receptive to us coming back with a rate structure that would give predictability for 2 or 3 years. And we would lay out what those rates would look like. We would still go to a public hearing every year, and if the public hearing would only be if there is a very significant deviation from what our estimates were, that would require the rates to be revisited. That's the conversation I'm envisioning to have with the board.
It's a good idea. Board is one.
Question on that step one subsidy, you mentioned about that kind of having, is it definitive that it promotes that? Like, does the general community understand how to stay in step one to the point of where they are really trying to do that? Or is that just more anecdotal? too?
It's anecdotal.
Alright,
I mean, it's more where the DEP policy that you have to have an inclining block rate.
okay,
Comes into play. But you also have the DOR regulations that you're trying to have a rate structure that's recovering your costs.
right,
So if you're having extraordinarily high rates at the top, you're supposed to have lower rates at the bottom. So we're always doing that adjustments at both levels of where we have
Mike,
public policy that's sort of counterintuitive.
right. I think, I don't bring that up as my concern all previously, and then step one was, I just didn't know how much that impacted particular households that they're the most vulnerable in the community, and that was always more of my concern, you know, for elderly population, that kind of thing.
And certainly a lot of the elderly is, elders who live alone tend to be in that lower consumption. And people basically who live alone tend to be, in that lower consumption. It's people with children that get into the 3 and sometimes 4,
Yeah,
usage. The next page is the long history. And that is the bill consumption since 2018, and it is the every 3-year. First, the total bill consumption in water. 18 it was down, 19 it was up, 20 it was down, 21 it was up. 22 down, 23 up, 24 down. So to suggest 25 should be going up and then 26 should be going down. But the real driver is irrigation, is the fact that it's why it's such much more of a greater swing year to year. And then you're looking at your build averages over 3 years, over 5 years, which is the 5 years is what we talked about for water. Show there for 7 years. And then I also point out the lowest year for secondary water use, the lowest year is 2018. And because irrigation usage has increased. Additional meters. Additional larger homes with larger yards. That almost guarantees getting a second meter.
Well, I think it's smaller yards and more of them because of tear down, new construction, everything's getting a sprinkler system. The yards are smaller though.
If the
Yeah.
yards are small, generally they're using less water.
But I'm just saying, my point is there's more meters today than there were in 2018.
Correct.
Okay, when would Eddie, I forgot, I should know this, the towns on the June 30th fiscal year,
Yeah.
any new rates, are they effective, for some reason I was thinking October, but are they effective July 1st?
The rates this year, the recommendation in order to satisfy the Department of Revenue to show that we're generating the revenue, because if we can't show that the rates will generate the revenue, then Department of Revenue will not approve the tax rate and will require a town meeting to raise property taxes to subsidize the water or sewer
Yeah.
or anything. And that would have to all happen in October, but so we need them to be effective July 1st. Last year, one of the board members said, asked if we could hold off until October 1st, which we did, which was somewhat problematic trying to get the rate set, but they approved it because of the other issues that we were having with the failure of the billing software and such.
So, second part of this question is, so assuming a July 1st, new rates. And hypothetically, because we obviously haven't looked at all the options or any of the options yet, say secondary water rates were to go up. But that water ban that Karis explained is still in place. What's the assumption? What's kind of the going assumption right now? How long is that ban? Because that will obviously be a major factor in terms of generating irrigation revenue.
And do we have estimates on the impact so
Yeah.
far, which I assume we don't.
We don't, That's why I am relying upon the 5-year average for the irrigation. Irrigation use and hopefully we target now the worst case scenario is if we see by January that we're gonna have a significant shortfall and because of irrigation, and we'll know that because the irrigation.
Yeah.
The major irrigation season's over. That there can be a rate adjustment at that time, and we've had that happen in the past as well.
Well, what is kind of the current working assumption on when the ban will be lifted? Do you know, do you have one?
I defer to Karis on that.
I mean, I think when you're talking about for like planning purposes, right? I mean, it's weather variable. And I think one of the things you see as far as the patterns that you have, whether it's with the sewer with II or with water usage, it's all drought or flood, right? That's what drives water usage and the sewage for the most part, or the sewage consumption, like sewage processing in town. When we have cooler, wetter summers, the irrigation is lower. When you have hotter, drier summers, the irrigation is higher. When you have more high water table or flooding events, our sewer is higher because we're processing some amount of illicit discharge into our system, as well as just leaks through the system. So I can't predict it because it's all weather dependent. I think what we have seen though, in the last couple of years is a propensity towards extremes. So we have seen it go more, I mean, if we hadn't had the wet weather we had through April and May, I think we would have been at a level 3 or level 4 drought. And just for context, level 4 drought is like in a difficulty meeting fire flow issues, right? When you are talking about a community that is solely reliant on their own water supply, or it's tapping into the reserves of MWRA, because they have a 3 to 4 year capacity. So level 4 drought is a pretty extreme place to be for New England. And we're just seeing more of a propensity for it. So I can't give like clarity. It really depends on the weather pattern, what the weather pattern lines up as. What I will say is right now they have lifted the restriction, I think everywhere except for Southeast Massachusetts and the Cape and Islands. So again, it's going to be dependent on what they see in some of these stream flow measures when it comes to the area for this restriction. Bigger picture, the town is challenging this restriction. Again, I think if we get to like a level 3, level 4 drought, we're going to have our own concerns that are distinct from the state's. But for like this particular scenario, we have no issues meeting water pumping needs internally, nor do we have any, capacity limitations when it comes to MWRA. So, I think that's the other variable that's hanging out there is whether or not the town is successful in its ability to get the regulation overturned. It's on appeal right now with the Massachusetts Supreme Judicial Court, and arguments were heard. They weren't particularly promising to me as far as the general conversation that I heard, the questioning, the individuals who were challenging our challenge, which would be the Charles River Watershed Association. So I would anticipate, as far as planning for the future, that these restrictions are likely to be in place in the future. I mean, I think from a predictability perspective, and I would say as far as revenue generated from irrigation, when we have to implement, I think we can assume on a fairly regular basis, every 1 to 2 years for a portion of the irrigation season, we will have to restrict water usage.
I guess the real question is how many people are going to pay attention to it, right? Because it's not being enforced.
Yeah.
It's enforcement through education. When you get to the higher levels, will there be enforcement? And yeah, I mean, is it impacting people's behavior today?
My suspicion is the temperature and the volume of water that we're like, my guess is that's probably impacting people's behavior more than the restriction. The need to water is not as significant as it was, this time last year when it was a lot drier.
The,
I'm sorry, I'll just make this point. I would think that restriction in place is probably not gonna have as significant of an impact on the revenue as the restriction would imply.
Yeah.
Because I don't think people are going to behave in accordance with the restriction. That's a
Unless-
gamble,
Unless it's enforced.
unless it's
What
enforced.
does it take to have just a higher drought level?
I think that you would have to have a severe, a level 3, level 4. Drought conditions that people would truly, take notice, and the burden will be on the town to be more aggressive on enforcement.
So right now, there's no car driving around neighborhoods. I'm not saying I did or did not in the past and received a warning a long time ago, but no one's getting those letters right now.
We don't have the water police out,
Okay.
no,
All right.
no, we don't.
Mhm.
And again, this is what I feel comfortable using the 5-year average for irrigation, in our revenue estimate.
So, but what is DEP monitoring? I mean,
They're monitoring the, average, they're looking to have, usage be less than 65 gallons per person per day. And they're just simply taking your population, dividing them.
In aggregate.
Your residential usage.
So this particular restriction though is not tied to the 65 gallons per person per day. That was the restriction we had back when we did have the water police going around town. This particular one is, they have very long meetings, once a month where they bring in a bunch of experts across all of the different fields related to hydrology. So they're looking at, rain, averages. They're looking, it's about a 6-month look back they're looking for. So they want to see stability for 6 months as far as what they would expect from averages, which is one of the problems we have right now is we're like April and May were good, but we weren't good for December, January, and that's where it's throwing off. They also monitor stream flow in several locations. And again, in our region, there's multiple streams that they're looking at. So it's not just the Charles, right? There's other streams that impact it. And then they're looking at like other ecological factors. So they're looking at, are there intermittent streams? Are there areas that are typically wet, wetlands that are now dry? So there's a whole host of factors. I think there's like 7 or 8 members on the board, one of which is also the Massachusetts Water Works Association, who has been advocating very heavily for water producers within the area. So they've been articulating the difficulty of trying to maintain a restriction when you have a surplus of water at that time, right? So when you're dealing with wet conditions and still telling people there's a drought, trying to get compliance is really hard. So they're looking at a whole host of factors, and then they will vote what level you are in each one of those locations. And sometimes they have wells that they will test as well to see how well they're producing, given those factors. So they're looking at, I think they really are looking at drought conditions. It's for us, they're just looking at in a fairly physically large area for this, particular region.
a lot of furniture was to.
Dave, before you move off the stage, how do you think about leveraging this total billed sewer as a percentage of total billed water statistic?
It's, looking at, it sort of helps get a sense of how much, water, water is being used that's not,
Got it.
not,
Resulting
being
in
built
sewage,
to,
yeah.
built to sewer.
Okay,
Clearly secondary meter, but even some of the primary use, because we do have a percentage of, households that are not on sewer. So they don't get a sewer, bill, they only have a water bill. And that's actually explains why the residential primary water use differs from the sewer use by step, is because not all documents have sewer.
So that calculation for sewer based off of water usage, is that just a straight calculation that?
Whatever your primary water meter reads, whatever the usage is in the period, that's the same usage you bill for sewer.
Okay, is that a state or is that a town?
That's a town. There are some communities that make an assumption that That's a certain percentage of the water is not going down the drain. But most communities use the primary meter. The primary meter to be the basis of their sewer charge. The back in the days when they didn't have second meters. That was an often complaint people had is, well, I'm watering my garden outdoors and you charge me for the sewer. And that was the remedy that communities used, that they didn't use 100% of water usage. But over the last 30 years, in almost all communities, having irrigation meters, so that the indoor usage is almost all representative of what's going to the sewer. We don't hear the same concern being raised.
Could you increase that calculation if we wanted to? So instead of, use a gallon of water and it's 50 cents on the sewer, could you change the calculation so it's a gallon of water and for $1.75?
I'm not,
Are you saying like, so if I use.
So right now, let's say you use it,
10% of your water at the sewer rate, is that what you're saying? For example? Because right now the sewer rate's higher than the water rate. So you're saying like if I use one gallon of water, my sewer rate will be based on 1 gallon plus some percentage of that water?
yeah,
That's what you're saying?
yeah. Changing the calculation rather than the rate.
That would be fine.
it's,
No.
Okay.
we still have to have a rate.
Yeah,
Well, you have to have a software that could do it too, so.
You mentioned that there were restrictions on the state mandates you have to have a progressive water rate structure, right?
An inclining block rate. Yep.
And is that true for sewer as well?
No, sewer can be a flat rate.
Okay, and are there any other restrictions and or requirements that are imposed on that rate structure? Just an S
no,
inclining,
we have a lot more discretion on how sewer rates is up.
but water as well, sorry. It just has to be inclining.
It
Is
has
that
to
the
be
only
inclined,
requirement?
but you can have just a two-step rate.
Okay.
You can have.
Spread doesn't matter.
Yep,
Okay.
spread doesn't matter. All that is decided community by community. You can have different rates for commercial versus residential, for instance.
Dave, I'll go back to page one, just to clarify.
Yep.
In bringing this specific issue up last few meetings, that basic service fee on the primary meter, that $16, that is what's been in place for like 20 years? And it's never been touched, right?
Well, actually, we increased it just last year.
Yes.
From 15 to 16.
Yes, but besides that, that is the one question, right? That's the one that had never been adjusted. since-
It hadn't been adjusted since it was first implemented, yes.
What about that $5 secondary meter? What's the history of that one?
The, that just increased from $4 to $5 last year. And then we implemented the fee. I have to get back to you in the beginning of the day, but that came in after the basic service.
Okay, all right, but it's still been around for a while.
And they've both been around for pre-COVID years.
Okay.
So it's at least 6 years. Maybe even longer. The next page is which is the other fact variable. That comes into setting your rate structure is how much billable consumption is at each step. And this is showing the consumption for the last 5 completed fiscal years. And it's showing how much is of the total bill, primary water use, secondary water use. And then I showed them, the top is by the 100 cubic feet and the bottom is the percentage. And to that point, so for primary water use, 28.3% of billed water over the 5 years was at step 1. 45.7% of it was at step 2. 5.3% for step 3 and then 20.7% at top step. And then the secondary water, not surprising, people who get irrigation meters and like the water, and hence the top step has the greatest percentage usage. In the 5 years, these are the percentages that we use in terms of, for our forecasting, what the rate structure will generate from revenue.
I mean, it's interesting because the next page kind of gives you more of that breakdown, but effectively 20% of your water billings come from step 4 secondary. Approximately.
Yeah.
7 or 8% of your usage.
And then the opposite page, the same thing here for sewer.
What was the big jump in 2024 for the step 4 primary water usage? I mean, I see the percentage jump too. It was just new businesses.
That jump increase was a result of a couple of customers, which I don't anticipate gonna happen again.
So this might be, it might be.
It's definitely an aberration, and, in fact, one of the customers is in a dispute with us on the bills.
Okay.
So,
But it's interesting because step 1 and step 2 both declined. So if you strip out that anomaly in step 4. And that's significantly change direction.
yes. So, in terms of the averages, I didn't use, even though I'm using the step 4 build consumption, I'm not using the, FY 24 percentages by bottom, I'm relying upon the 5-year averages.
What was the theory again on the step 3 dip? Like it being so much lower,
What you mean?
like the step 3 usage?
Why is it so much lower in general than the other steps?
Oh, it's a small step, it's, in terms of, build
Some
volume.
people kind of barely get into it, and other people just blow
Oh,
off.
yeah.
And then others just blow right
Right,
now.
yeah, got it.
I mean, step 1 and step 2 dropped precipitously in 2024 too.
Yeah.
Primary one.
Well, because, consumption, yes, it did, because, consumption, consumption was down.
I mean, it's consistently in the 280,000 range, right? For step 1, I'm going down this.
Then we were down to 200.
That's a big change.
Yes,
And we don't know what that's.
well, some of it is, because, remember your irrigation, you see the same thing happen with your irrigation. And not all the households are connected to sewer, so they're not impacted by their primary water use. So, they, because they did not use as much water, and other changes in the market. I mean, it's short of looking at every single customer to figure out what they were doing, we do see those, numbers decline when we see a noticeable decline in irrigation. Because the people who live on Child River Street that don't have street. If they're wet, they're using as much water, and all that was going through the primary, and it's not irrigating. Their indoor use is pretty constant, but their outdoor use, or where they only have 1 meter. You'll notice the change much more significantly.
When's the last time we adjusted the volume levels associated with each step? I only recall in the past few years talking about the rates at each step.
I
No,
think that's what you were asking more or less about, right, John? Kind of.
because the step 3 is an interesting one that you brought
Right.
up. Like, it almost seems like it's suboptimally
I think you might as well just
Set.
make it whatever step 4 is.
lower step
Yeah,
3,
yeah.
and you end up capturing more of step 2.
Yeah, well, you probably want to go, raise it to step
Or
4,
a, yeah.
because you're losing even more money. than
Yeah,
step 2 is
yeah.
cheaper.
But I'm saying
You
if
just
the-
remove step 3.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, and in fact, when we get into the rate scenarios, that's one of the
Oh, you
concepts
did,
I suggested.
Yeah.
So,
Just served it up for you, Dave.
Just going back, so I mean, I'm looking at the 9 months year to date for 25. It looks like though. I think you already said it, but just to clarify, it looks like trends are more. Tilted towards previous years, not 24.
correct, yeah,
Okay.
2024, there was definitely an aberration there.
Yeah, it was that 280-ish number, that 440 range, or 21 can you explain, but, I mean, that seems pretty consistent, so it seems reasonable to expect there'll be an improvement. Yeah, 25 and maybe 26, okay.
The 26 is, of course, what happened to the economy overall.
Sure.
Yeah, did you get- did you get that?
Sorry, John.
This, which option gets rid of step three?
No, it doesn't get rid of it, with the rates, you'll see it.
This one.
It makes it easier just to change the rate than it is to rebuild the actual template.
Got it, okay.
Walking through the different rate structures, water, we always start, the very first one is telling you, okay, what do we need to raise? $7.4 million. What's our, consumption estimate? We use the 5-year average for, both primary and secondary. Use those against what our current rate structures. Do we have a shortfall in how significant? In this case, based upon those factors, but revenue to be raised, consumption to be billed, percentage of each step that represents the consumption. We fall short by 9.5%. Again, as a reminder, basically we consider having met our target if the revenue falls between 98.5 and 101.5%. Basically, you say we're balanced. So clearly we know we can't just not adjust the rates. And where you see the yellow highlights, that's showing that those are rates that are below cost. The first obvious thing is, okay, what do you need to raise? We need to raise 9.5% more in revenue for water over what the rates currently would generate. So we raise all the rates by 9.5%. As you can see, the math works out that basically we're 100% where we need to be at. It's actually $2,754 less. But again, 100% from our standpoint. Over in the far right, you would see that that would increase the total annual bill for the average by $41.40 for an 8.2% increase. The next scenario on here is to increase the service fee, which is increase the primary service fee by $16 a year.
You're talking about the flat rate,
Yep, flat rate.
so double it basically.
Yeah, basically. Well, no, not doubling, because it's it's $64 for the year. This would increase the $64 cost to $80 a year. Basically, $16 a quarter will be $20 a quarter. And increase the secondary fee, which by $5. Keep all the rates the same, don't change any of the rates. The amount that we would have to raise through consumption drops from $7,411,000 down to $7,241,000. It doesn't do the job though. It's we're still 7% short, or we're at 93.4%. The increase on the annual water bill is $16, which is basically increasing the fee by $4 each quarter. It's at 3.2%. The next thing is looking at increasing the rates, for, water at 4%. And the irrigation rates by 8%. The justification, we talked about a higher percentage increase for irrigation is because they use through the secondary meters. Puts more pressure on the town to buy MWRA water, which is more expensive than our own water, so there is a justification to have a greater percentage increase in their rates over the primary rates. That would mean that, it would increase the annual water bill for the primary customer by 3.4% for $17.28 a year. That doesn't meet the target.
Can I ask it? I don't want this to sound snarky, but is it? We have how many different alternatives here? 88 this year? And if I'm reading this, it's only the bolded ones together that
Yes, the
meet,
green
meet,
bolts, yep.
okay, that meet the objective.
Yeah.
So. Is it worth talking about the scenarios that don't meet the objectives? Unless, unless it's gonna work in combination here.
In detail, no, but there's just an explanation, because the select board's always gonna ask.
Yeah.
How can you have something cheaper than what you're bringing us?
Yeah.
And you need to show, well, if you do this cheaper, you will not hit the target, and then you'll have to go to town meeting, and you'll have to raise people's property taxes, so people who wanna water a lot, want to pay for it. So
So this is just context for them showing that you went through every scenario and, okay.
I see the value more in your second point, which is the combination. So you could stretch a scenario plan in your own head.
Yeah, because I'm
The
immediately,
Magnitude impact of X.
yeah, I'm immediately drawn to, I don't want to look at 88 of these.
Yeah.
But, you know, we will. And the ones that are meaningful in combination, that's
Correct.
okay.
And then we looked at, the two different, rate structure. The,
Which one are we at now? Right now?
and that was W4 that I was showing.
Yeah, just a question on the target revenue. Why is that W37241 not 7411 or 7024?
Cause he changed the fix.
Target revenue. The target revenue is how much you need.
It's 7,411,000, correct?
No, but on W3, it's 7,241,000.
Because in that one is reduced because in that where you increase the fixed fee, remember I deduct the
out
fixed
from
fee.
that.
Oh, you deduct it from the.
Yes.
Oh,
So that's why it's in yellows, you see that it's a different amount. So increasing the fixed fee by $16 over the course of the year, going from 64 a year to 80.
On a steady basis, how much revenue does that generate? It's a little, I was trying to do the math and I can't.
The it generates right now, the fee that we have 16 generates 600,000 a year.
Okay, and this proposal would be an estimate of what that would result in.
Well, this would have generated another, it's just the simple math, it's only two numbers.
I don't know if we ever looked at it this way in the past, this is new to me, but have we ever talked about this before, instead of raising rates as far as cutting subsidies, cause that cutting the subsidy sounds a lot better.
170,000, okay, so it should be 772.
Right,
Yeah.
yeah,
I'm sorry.
but we never looked, like, I'm trying to think of that last couple of years. Did you ever do that cut by cut subsidy?
Well, you have to raise, to get rid of
So we always
something.
talk about like raise rate,
It's just inverted.
it's a little bit of wordsmithing, but it sounds good. I'd rather say, hey, I've gotta reduce some of that subsidy, and I'm sorry, but at least we're not, not raising rates as much as we're cutting subsidies.
You can run the market.
Roll that marketing.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Create the flyers.
I like the angle, I just like seeing that, so cut these subsidies a little. Raise rates.
So, so then, option 5. In terms of that,
understand.
I don't understand five either, because what shouldn't five match one, or the current rate structure?
That's what I would have.
I'm confused on
Okay.
going on five, or is that because of the expected higher consumption?
Yeah.
Weird.
This is where, that's what I actually talked about, my email to you all, is we set our target based upon a 3-year forecast. Given the percentage increases that we're looking at in water in order to hit that revenue target, seems difficult to achieve. So I said, okay, what if we're just trying to hit what we must raise for 2026? So the $7,024,635 is what we must raise.
It's a floor, has to
The
have.
floor, that's
Got it.
what we must raise,
Interesting.
have a balanced, budget. For FY 26, so I started looking at rate options using that number.
Got it.
So I assume that would, if it was that minimum floor number, there'd just have to be spending cuts, is that how it would be balanced out, excuse me?
No, this would meet what our budget is,
Okay.
but it will make the outlet much more.
Yeah, it would just be a higher increase next
Got it.
year.
Yeah.
Presumably.
This one. And so I did the same exercise, and to raise the minimum amount that we need to raise, we're still not hitting the target. We're at 96.3%. 96.3% of the 7,024,000 number versus the 7,411,000 that we were comparing ourselves to earlier. So with that, which requires a 3.8% across the board step increase, same situation. Water rates, 3.8%, actually translates into a 3.4% increase on the average. W7, this is again looking at raising the base fee by $16 for the year. It's a 5.4% increase. The other thing is getting to that concept, getting rid of the subsidy at step 3. So here, no subsidy at step 3, so we're at $5.44. So you only have.
That's
subsidy.
the scenario. It's close to what we were talking about.
Yeah.
Got it.
The,
It still doesn't lower, I know the objective is to gradually lower and gradually at least, the step one and step two subsidies though.
and it's too much,
It persists, it's
Yeah, it persists.
72%.
and that's where we'll need the board to say, yes. Do come back and be more aggressive on reducing the subsidy.
Mhm.
Option 8 is, it's the same thing, get rid of that subsidy at step 3 at 5.44 and just increasing the other rates at 3%. So as you can see, even though there are not many people that are hitting the step 3. And just increasing the rates by 3%, eliminating that subsidy. At step 3, which is a 20% increase in the rate. Means the annual bill is growing by 4.5%. Of course, the news media is gonna focus on the percentage. The folks that are being practical is, it's $22.56 more a year. The average house is selling for $1.5 million. It's so, that's not a difficult. That is not a difficult change to make. But again, percentages is what folks increase.
And Dave, just so I make sure I understand, where we have red,
Red means it's under 100%.
okay, but it still would, okay, so the actual, the percentage highlighted is. Indicates whether.
Yes.
Yeah,
We
okay,
want that number to be
Yeah,
between
I was- yeah,
98.5
101,
and above. Yeah.
okay, thanks.
9 stuff.
9 is, this gets back to, Matt, let's Let's
We're
reduce
cutting
the
the subsidy by 50%.
You're being recorded, you're
I
on.
were raising, well, you know.
He's leaving town. It doesn't matter.
You can speak for me, how about
The
that?
mayor cut the 50% subsidy. We ran out of town.
Cut the subsidy in half, in 1 year, means it's a 21.4% increase. Or just under $108 more a year. It definitely meets the revenue target, and,
You don't think this is a realistic step?
I do not see the board voting for this at all. I see explaining this to the board why we will, the long term is not supportable, just as top consumption step keeps declining. You gotta keep increasing that by incredible amounts in order to offset this. You have a smaller and smaller population or usage, trying to subsidize a greater and greater percentage of usage.
Before we move to sewers, I have a question about, number 2. So all steps increase by 9.5%. Is 9.5% that sticker number? I mean, is that too much for even the select board as well, or what type of practical limits would there be? I'm not agreeing, I'm not saying I agree, disagree, I'm just curious. Or it's like 9.5%, no way, okay, that's a chance.
Well, if the rate would be 9.5, we would focus that it would mean it's an 8.2% increase in the annual bill. I think it'll be. If it wasn't, which we're gonna be talking about, if it wasn't for the fact that the sewer, which has an even greater problem, needs a greater increase than the water. I don't think they're gonna be as receptive to a higher percentage on the water.
The other question is, so if we solve to fiscal 26 on water.
Yeah.
How does that change? Do you know how it changes to 7411 that we would have to solve to the next year? Because presumably that goes up.
Well, correct, it will probably impact the following year's rates by another 1 to 2%.
So you might be 5% that you're locked into next year.
Yes.
That's my rough back of the envelope math.
Yeah, we told the board last year when we came with the rate increase, last year that they were gonna be looking at a 5%
Yeah, okay.
increases. 5-6% increases for a few years, because we were still trying to offset the impact of the Coca-Cola project.
Okay.
The concern on option W was that you still felt that the subsidy in step 1 and 2 were too high. Is that what you were saying?
Yes, all of that, the 38% is just.
This is too much.
It's just way too much, and particularly, even if an argument was to be made that you want to be that generous, step 2 is, it's only a few percentage points less than step 1.
Right.
And again, that's 70% of your total bill. I don't know of any industry or any business that could basically give away at below cost their service or product and stay in business. It's just not sustainable.
I mean, my gut says there's a variation of 8 that reduces the subsidy further for 1 and 2. You don't have to cut it much.
I
It
think
starts bringing more.
if we can get to eliminating subsidy in step 3, I think that will be a good step forward. And not as the costing.
Was there one that had that? Oh, yeah.
Yes, yes.
Okay.
And then the sewer, they don't need to be as detailed to you understand the concepts of the different funds. The first one is showing that the current rate structure generates only 89.1% of what we need to hit. We would require all steps to increase by 12.3% in order to have a balance to hit our target. Certainly not gonna sell a concept. Do we have to charge an inclining block rate for sewer? No, can we have a flat rate? I showed what a flat rate would look like, which we know would be $13.08, which would mean that the top step 4 would actually go down and all the other steps go up. That would result in a 13.6% increase in the bill. Step 4, option 4, that is, looking the same thing, get rid of the subsidy at, in this case, at, step 2 and step 3. But keep the same rate or same subsidy at step 1. We would be looking at a 5% increase in the step 4 rate. So to be clear, what this is doing is raising, get rid of the subsidy at step 2. So you're at 1308, get rid of the subsidy at step 3, so you're 1308. And increasing the step 4 rate by 5%. What that means is the step 3 rate actually is a 4.6% increase. And that the step 2 rate is a 12.9% increase. That concept raises the sewer bill 9.3% or $132 per year. Option 5, just like with water, okay, what's the base minimum that we have to raise for FY26 only? That's what the $10,261,000 means versus the $11 million number. We have, we're at 96.1% of that number. That would require all steps to be charged at 4.1%. They get our revenue now target for 6, with a 4% increase in the average bill.
And I guess the hard question, if you did this on sewer, then you're basically saying that a 15% increase next year.
In this case, yeah.
Yeah.
Which, I'm sorry, which option is it?
If we were to, going for a $10.2 million project instead of 11.3, the following year, that number is going to be more like trying to hit on 11.8.
Yeah. Okay.
So option 7, increase all the steps by 5%. Which gets rid of the subsidy at step 3, actually helping to subsidize step 1 and step 2. That's a 4.8%. That's a very doable number. Looking at 6% increase. In this case, no subsidy at step 3, only a 6% subsidy at step 2. And the 15%, 14.9% subsidy at step 1. That would mean a 5.8% increase in the rate. Another concept is to keep the rate structure the same and just increase the annual fee to $100, or basically increasing it by $12 a quarter. It would increase the annual sewer bill by $48, 34.4% increase, but it hits the revenue target. And then, step 10, this is a little more methodical.
Creative there.
Yeah, increasing the annual fee, $80, so, you know, that fixed revenue stream, and then, adjust step 1 by 4%. Yeah, and mitigate, and have the step 2 rate go up only by 3%. Step 3 rate, it would increase by 4.6%, basically to get rid of it. There will be no subsidy. And they have the step 4 rate increased by 4. So you're doing many different things here in order to smooth out the impact. It's gonna hit different customers differently. But the average customer would be looking at a 5.2% increase.
But it does not position the funds for the enterprise as well for fiscal 26.
This one actually does a little better because this one actually gets us above what we need to raise, 103% of the target.
Even with the total target revenue number being lower.
But this is increasing the fixed fee though. That's-
Okay.
that-
Oh, yes.
Yeah, that's right, that's the things.
Just forget that's net. So same question. So on option number 2.
Yeah.
All steps changed by 12.3%. But you know, the subsidy actually, it's interesting on this one, this ultimately gets to what the objective, like, you know. We're talking about, over, you know, whether it be over time or whatever, the sewer, I think it was 10 and 5 that you said for is.
Yeah, ideally, yeah.
How realistic is, you know, 12.3% gonna be, if, you know, when delivering that to the select board? Not realistic.
Yeah.
I want something.
What did we recommend again, or what was recommended last year? I know we usually do a couple options to the select board, but the last sewer round was pretty heavy too, right?
Yes, the sewer, remember, the increase in sewer, the things they're driving at is, we're still trying to get the rate structure back into place post Coca-Cola,
Right.
and that we have a declining billable consumption to spread the cost over. And our costs are continuing to increase, both in terms of the assessment and then the infrastructure needs, so we're looking at some $30 million of sewer lines that need to be replaced over the next 5 to 7 years.
Hmm.
So that's also driving the cost.
What do you think, and kind of the Harold question, what do you think is a tolerable increase for the select board on sewer? 7-8%?
I would focus on the total increase. I think if we come in with something 6% or under, which is close to what happened last year, where they were already on notice that that's going to be through.
Yeah.
Is going to be an easier sell than above. But stressing that we think that the rate structure, we need to have a rate structure that limit or reduces those subsidies significantly in order to make the system sustainable going forward. Going forward, we're not talking a year or two, we're talking for 10 years plus.
You know, because these are pretty big numbers, and again, I'll go back to a question I asked earlier, which is, you know, maybe this year more than any other year. I know you said you're having conversations when they might be a good idea to show like, okay, if we want to forego at 12 and 9.5% now, but this is what it's gonna look like over the next 3 years potentially, and same with the sewer. We kind of verbally said that to the select board, or I guess John, you kind of said that, we said that more or less to expect this is not the last one.
Right.
But I don't know, like I said, I'm not, obviously, that's, you know, something you're handling, discussing with them, but I do think it would be.
Yeah.
Helpful to understand, you know. What the next 2 or 3 years are gonna look like if you go down one path versus the other.
Yeah, I mean, I thought your narrative in the email on infrastructure costs, both water and sewer.
Yeah.
Over needing a lot of attention, that's a good narrative to set up for that.
Yeah.
I mean, there's plenty of options here that are 5% or below.
Correct.
There's like 6 or 7, and then. You know. Couple in that just under 10%, you know, at least one.
Yeah, for instance, you know, to John's point, I was looking at water option 6. I feel like the select board can ask a lot of questions, why not this one? And then you get to point out that it's the target revenues, right?
Yep.
That's why it's not bad, but I feel like this one in particular, it's 3.4%. There might be more focus on this one, but I see, you know, the subsidies are still quite high.
But some of the options, I think, I mean, we can show them an option that significantly reduces some of the subsidy, but to recognize, like alternative 25. And give the subsidy, water subsidy at step 3, and having no subsidy in sewer. In other words, a flat rate, that's 11.2% increase. And so that's something to explain to the board. I know they will not be receptive to implementing that rate structure, but to understand it's not gonna be easy to get off the subsidy wagon. So, some of the options, that I think, accomplish some movement of reducing subsidies, definitely reasonable. Is alternative 52. You're looking at a 4.1% increase.
I think there's a formatting issue. Sewer 8 should meet your target, but it doesn't look bolded in your scenario tables.
Let's see. Yes, it definitely should meet. Oh, I just forgot to bold it.
Okay.
Yep.
All right, but I'm not misinterpreting that, right?
No,
Same
no,
with-
you're not misinterpreting.
Same with sewer 10, I think. Is that correct? Yeah, sewer 10 was oversolving. 103%.
Yeah, it's green,
Okay,
I'm not doing it.
just making sure.
Dave, you said alternative 52.
Alternative 52 is certainly a 4.1% increase. It's,
It does have that W8 option though. That, would you say that the subsidies are still too high for 1 and 2?
oh, yeah, it still has, but it gets rid of the subsidy at step 3 at least. We gotta get rid of.
Say it's like a first step,
It's the first step of a,
first step
Okay,
is that
step,
step.
yeah.
and
First step, step 3.
3.
Yeah.
3-step program.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
3-step.
Yeah.
and then, and then, of course, alternative 61 also, you comfortable at 4.7%.
It doesn't. But 52 is using 2026 for water.
Oh, correct. Correct. This is a focus of trying to keep it under. Trying to keep it under the 6%. Means we have to focus on just meeting the base requirement, not meeting our traditional 3-year average. But it's just,
Yeah, and I know that was in the memo. And then what, after 52 was the next one you were highlighting?
another one I think is, good is, alternative 61.
I'm fairly partial to 70. And 87.
No, 61 and 70, really the only difference is where you're on a 6% increase in the sewer rates instead of a 5%. Which actually will make the 27 year
That's right.
a little easier
Yeah, exactly.
on a percentage basis. Moved, I'm sorry, the other number.
87.
Oh, yes, yeah. The reason they weren't folded was because they're green. Is because they raised even more than 101%.
Just to definitively confirm. Number alternate option number 10, you think there's no chance?
Oh, no, option 10,
Or it's just the direct shortfalls, or it's a direct rate increase?
Yeah.
No,
no, so this is when you package it, you gotta look at a package, as they stand alone.
Yeah.
Yeah, they don't.
Yeah.
The optics don't look good, so you have to look at the balancing between water and sewer
Mhm.
and what does the overall impact look like? It's a little more receptive for passage. So,
So 10.9%, is what you're referring to? That end number?
yes, so
You think that would?
Collectively, it's under 10, right?
collectively,
collectively it's 10.9.
No, collectively it's 10.9, yeah.
That's what I'm at.
Which one? So.
Oh, alternative. 10.
Alternative number ten,
Oh,
not
Not
sewer
option.
number ten.
Yeah, yeah, okay, yeah.
Alternative 10, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
You're saying that it's just no chance.
no.
Okay, even though hypothetically it could lead to way lower rate increases the following fiscal year compared to the other lower.
That is very true. Certainly presented, I can just, they wanted to delay a rate increase
Yeah.
that everybody knew about for 3 months and.
Look, I think if we think it's the right thing to recommend,
Yeah,
I'd get behind it as a recommendation. We're gonna give 3 recommendations, and I think.
the utilities do that.
Yeah.
The electric and the water and sewer, when they have an X shortfall, they go to the volumetric side and if it takes a double digit increase, it's what's done.
Just the mindset right now, what we're going through just in terms of cost increases and inflation,
Yeah,
the mindsets are there. And I
Yeah.
think it's responsible to do it.
if we were to hypothetically present that, I think it would be really, most important for this one in particular, say, this is how much less though next year's rates would have to increase compared to these other options.
Yeah.
No, so like more pain now, less pain later, I guess.
You said 87 in 1 year.
70 and
Dave, is it
80
possible to, if we, let's say we choose 3 scenarios, see how that ranks us against.
Yes, I would do that.
Yeah. Okay.
Actually, why don't we identify 5 options? Which then I can put together and show where that throws us in terms of comparison to the other communities. Show what that potentially means the following year for increases,
Yeah,
and then,
That's right.
and then we can.
that's gonna be, yeah.
And then we can narrow it down from that at the next meeting, which I think won't be too long.
So Dave, can you
option 10
recap again which ones kind of you've.
Yeah, okay,
Alternative.
Alternative 10. Deals with the issues up front, and that is, what is the rate increase?
Yeah,
Everybody feels the same.
I think it's worth at least showing that.
Yeah.
No matter what,
Yeah.
whether it's an official, I think.
Everybody
For
feels the
context.
same. Although we would still have issues with subsidies, so.
Only for the water, not for the
Yeah.
sewer. Sewer would be taken care of.
Yeah.
If you do option 10, you gotta throw in option 88.
So 10 and 88, yep.
It's,
Hmm.
what I would do.
So option 10, alternative 10, alternative 88. More of the numbers that.
The rest of it is just arbitrary.
It is three, alternative 70.
Or the other ones are thrown out 70 and 61.
70 and which one?
61.
Outside of anything else, most of what you were recommending there had the W rate. Yeah, okay. We just. And then we have the one that's just the overall, we have to hit this number, but WH is the recommended water, and then we just need to figure out what's.
Eight works because it zeroes out the step three subsidy. Revenue targets met.
The WA creates a column for the following year.
Potentially, and
Yes, well, anything that's, and
2026.
yeah, options W five through W nine all have a greater impact of what 27 is gonna look like than options 2, 3, and 4. Yeah,
I mean, I think a variation of 8 that further reduces subsidies in step 1 and step 2, which I don't think you have anywhere. Would be interesting. If we remove step 3 subsidy,
There was one that had W, there was,
eight,
yeah.
eight modestly reduced to. And nine, but. Nine in the same way.
But again, the thought process on W eight is you remove the subsidy from step 3, and then in subsequent years, you start to cut the subsidy.
try to reduce,
Yeah.
begin reducing the subsidies, you know, in earnest, the next year you'll be looking to do a meaningful reduction in step 2 subsidy, and then
okay.
year 3 and year 4 is when you start trying to get to step 1 subsidy rate reduction.
There's a lot going on with that sewer one, but
Yeah,
it does kind of spread out.
Yeah.
The lot of different angles,
gives you a little bit more buffer too than 70, which I like.
yeah.
Yeah, and yeah, I have 88.
87,
87,
87 versus 70.
I think
Like
we
if
can
you
follow.
chose between those two, I think I would bias towards 87 as well.
87 versus,
Versus 70.
Yeah, because 87, you had the water option 8, but then that was that sewer option 10 that you had, we're all over the place, but it kind of hit everything a little bit,
okay,
instead of one thing a lot.
yep, so. So option 87,
Yeah, alternative 87, I think with the alternative 88 was just as a contrary to the.
Yeah.
Kind of whatever.
61. And. About 20. No, it's an 11.2. No, not
25.
Yeah, I was gonna say
Yeah, I was
25.
looking at the,
So perhaps rather than alternative 10. We want, why don't we look at having alternative 25? I think showing. It's a dramatic increase in the sewer for the low-end customers, but. It ensures that everybody's paying the same rate for sewer. More pro-business. and gets, and there's no subsidies now. I do not expect the board to support that, but it's certainly something to show what you would do in order to get rid of the subsidy. Assist businesses, we're not trying to transfer all the costs onto the businesses.
That's why you're saying it's more for business, because it just spreads it evenly.
Because actually
Folks
their
can
rates,
get on the top end.
their
yeah.
costs will actually go down a little bit
Yeah,
if the rate, if the rate was a flat rate.
I mean, zeroing out the subsidies in 1 year too is aggressive.
Yes, that's,
Mhm.
I don't see
I don't,
doing it.
yeah, I don't wanna realistic that is.
Dave, I'm sorry, can you repeat the numbers you've written down so far?
So, 10. 25. Those are both options that we would expect the board will not actually entertain. 61. 87. 78.
You got the two that are basically saying the actual need.
Is that it now?
It was,
Oh, was I think back to 87.
And 88 was still just to kind of coincide with that need for the overall.
Yeah, eliminating, reducing subsidies.
But aside from those two things, I guess, does anybody on the committee, like, does everybody feel pretty good, at least like saying that we all agree that depth water 8, that we can all get behind that?
I think I'm stuck, I'm sorry. It's, here, it's just, I think 10, I'm a. You know, steep increases have to happen. And, you know, we've been putting off and putting off and putting off over a number of years with Coca-Cola leaving and all that.
Alternative then, got it.
Yeah, alternatives,
Water 10,
yeah.
No, alternative then, there is no.
oh, alternative.
That would be water 2 and sewer 2.
Water 2.
And I think showing why a major investment with the rates for fiscal 26 would lead to more benefits and less onerous increases for following years. And kind of
But you,
move towards right
I
side.
don't disagree that you have to show it,
but
but I
you,
think we have to be practical around.
Yeah, no, I know. But that's what I'm saying, I'm not totally sold, because some of the other stuff is just not gonna leave one or the other fund or enterprise on the right footing for the following year. It's more like a half measure for some of it. So
But with 25, don't you cut some of the well,
25, I see the point everyone's made, but
Yeah.
I personally, this is my personal opinion, I think going with a flat rate might be more controversial than option 10 or alternative 10 of the double digit increase.
Why would, on the sewer, why would a flat rate be controversial? You have no control over that amount, basically. It is.
Well, it's a regressive move. To just. It is increasing in 1 to 3 at the, you know, for the benefit of 4.
You could move in that direction.
You
Which is
could,
what you're
you
doing
could,
by
and they
starting
can't just-
to peel back subsidies on your lower bands.
Yeah. I can see that being politically fraught though.
so you wanna have an option besides the water 2 option, so you're okay with the water 8. But. You just wanna kind of.
Yeah, yes, we're wondering again, yeah, I think I was okay with it, but that's gonna lead even the bigger problems down the road, but yes, I can live with moderate too.
But to Dave's point, he was saying that, you know, gets you the ball rolling on the
Yeah.
subsidy thing,
Yep,
yeah.
yeah, I would say a water 8 is probably the next best option.
The only problem with water 2 is that that'll probably. get shot down.
Well, is there,
And it actually doesn't get rid of the subsidy in step three.
yeah, so I was just about to, so. Can water two be modified to include potentially a lower volumetric rate, but incorporate fee increases, the base fee increases? Do you know what I mean? So it, or do you, is that even one of these? I haven't.
Yes, we do have an option that increases the fixed fee you talked about.
The fixed fee plus, I'm just throwing out a number, a 5 or 6% water rate increase. So it's still a healthy increase in the water rate, but also combined with the base charge. I didn't see that.
W7,
Increase on the fee window, subsidy step 3.
So that's basically the only increase in the rate on step 3 though, right?
Well, here's the thing,
Yeah.
though, is if you wanna take, if you're okay with the subsidy and the step three going away, then really, don't you just want an option that decreases the subsidy a little bit more for two and one?
That's what I was saying.
Yeah,
Yeah, but
It's
it
a
doesn't do
variation
that.
of eight.
That's, yes, the 8 does that.
8 doesn't a little, but
but not
I
as
think
much.
variation of 8 that doesn't more.
Yeah, but 7 doesn't do it at all.
7 gets rid of the subsidy at step 3,
Yes,
but it doesn't even change the rate for step 1 and 2.
that's what I was at. Yeah, and as you just said a few minutes ago, 70% of the billing is step 2. What if, water 7? Were to also include, I don't know what modest would be, but in addition to what's listed here, step 1 and step 2. Volumetric rates by X%.
Well, W8, we're effectively increasing step 1 and 2 rate by 3%, which reduces the subsidy a little from 38 down to 36%. It gets rid of the subsidy completely for step 3. And increases the step 4 rate by 3%.
I mean, with 7 going back to it, increasing the base fee by $16 wouldn't necessarily have to happen. If you raised on to no subsidy equivalent, I forgot what the percentage is, say 20 or something.
Yeah,
for
it's
step
a
3.
20% increase. Yeah.
If the increase in the base fee was cut, I'm just throwing out a
Yeah.
number to $10 instead of 16.
Yep.
And then volumetric increases are raised for steps 1 and 2.
All we got. Okay, no. $10 and then percent. Change for 1 and 2. I can run a calculation like that, see what it looks like.
And Dave, did you say that we're gonna look at the individual water and sewer number, and it was just the combined?
No, the select board is interested in the final,
Final number,
the
okay.
final.
So and I guess just for instance, the other thing you could do, if you look at 8. Like, you're $1.97, $1.72 subsidy versus you switch to what you were talking about with this thing, hey, we really need to take that rate. That takes those subsidies down to $1.75, $1.49 for step 1 and 2. I still think you're probably better off landing in your 8 option and then just taking these subsidies down slightly. I don't know, you have to make the math work on it. Might
Yeah.
be much like 5 or
Yeah.
6, right?
I'm
Yeah,
same mindset.
then you're getting a little more progress, I guess, for step 1 and 2.
But the meat fiscal 20, it's all based on that meat fiscal 26, which is there's risk with that, right? For future years?
Yes, because we're trying to hit a smaller dollar target than our 3-year average, but it presents it presents a lower percentage increase.
Yeah.
And
Presumably, we can infer that would mean for fiscal 27, a higher.
Yeah, no, 1 to 2%. So in other words, what I'm saying is
Yeah.
if 27, we were looking at a 4% increase, because of this, it'd be looking at a 5 or 6% increase.
Yeah.
So which options are not 2026? It's 10. That you threw out? 25, not 25 includes
Yeah,
2026.
alternative 10,
Yeah,
which basically is status quo in terms of subsidies, just that everybody's equally sharing in the
Yeah.
exact same percentage increase. Alternative 25, which is getting rid of the subsidy in water at step 3. In slightly,
but that uses 2026 budget,
yes, it does,
which I don't like. And then,
but it does use a flat rate of 1308 for sewer, so it gets rid of the subsidies.
61 also uses 26.
Dave, in terms of how the process works. I know that you have the revenue targets and everything, but is it possible to still pass, say, I'm just throwing out option
Yeah, go
4, option W4.
Yeah.
So it ends up at 96.5%. Would that still theoretically pass, or is that like a hard policy?
No, that's the guidance that I provide in terms of estimating. Of what you're trying to get, because the fact that you're never gonna have a system that's gonna get that exact dollar amount you need. Yeah.
I mean, for me, I think that the sewer option S2 is, for me, I think makes the most sense, because the sewer is facing the music more right now. I mean, I know that's a steep increase, but could that be coupled with potentially a water option that is out of that target, is below the target range? You know what I mean?
Yes,
So
yes.
it could be more feasible to explain that or to pass that. I'm not opining on which one, shortfall.
Online,
Sewer 2, I mean, sewer option 2, it really takes care, it takes care, but addresses significantly, some of the concerns that you highlighted.
Yeah, well, yes, S2, with, option W6, which is alternative 14, that's certainly one where we're dealing with sewer and hunting on water, but it's not unreasonable.
You said it, I didn't.
Yeah.
Alternative 15.
Alternative 15, yeah. Alternative 16 is. Alternative, the option I see most likely. To get you option, S2, sewer 2, would be. Alternative 16.
10%.
Yeah, I mean. That's as far as you would ever get them to go. I don't see any other S2 option.
That would also, though, I'm looking though, I mean, that would address another thing, because obviously W8 zeroes out the step 3 subsidy.
Yes.
Your subsidy rolling thing on step 3.
Yeah, the annual change on 8 is 4.5%.
It was 9.9%, if I was sound better, but.
And $99.99.
Let's say it was
It's
not
really
a
$90.
Not a double digit increase, 9.99.
Just step out. the
I tried
decimal
that.
point.
With $1,999,995.
But you're right, it does get you in a better place with the sewer option.
It's fair to say, is it fair to say that recommending sewer option S2 would significantly stabilize the finances of the sewer enterprise?
They'll certainly make 27 easier to do, but that's, that would be the reason to explain why it's being presented to the board. I cannot see the board actually, I don't see the board voting any S2 option,
Okay,
but to give them an S2 for the sound reasoning. of the plans, that seems to make the most sense. Again, looking at a fiscal stability standpoint.
You think 16 makes the most sense? Then,
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. If they're back up for sure.
yeah,
Yeah. Like about 10, or not even like about.
sewer?
Yeah, why did 10 kind of help get you to somewhere where you're trying to get them to?
Alternative 10 or sewer 10?
Sorry, sewer 10.
Sewer, S10 on page,
Water 11, sewer 10.
page 24, okay.
Yeah, but I was just trying to get the.
Yeah,
S2 versus the S10.
Let's see. Wasn't there an issue with what that would mean for fiscal 27 on sewer 10?
Well, basically, S5 forward. All of them will have an implication for FY 27. Because we've lowered the number that we need to hit.
Yeah, it's
But-
almost a philosophical
But S
discussion here.
But S10 just in the
That was resolved.
is the best of the S10 options because it's bringing in 103%.
Yeah. No, it's kind of a philosophical discussion, but more really, stepping back, it's like. Do we want to recommend something more pain now, less pain later, or something that's less pain now, potentially even more pain later? And you believe that if select boards might be more inclined to the latter?
Yes, unless we're showing an incremental way to resolve the problem, so. Be more supportive of it as a 6-7% increase. Yeah, they understand we're trying to correct the problem over multiple years.
What happens, let's say you went with S2
Yeah.
and 26, you ended up having a surplus of $1 million in sewer. What happens with that? I
Well,
mean, you're stepping rates, so you're adjusting progressively to where you need to get to, but what happens from a budgetary standpoint to that?
well, it's a surplus that then can fund,
Go somewhere else.
it
Yeah.
can fund,
It
Fiscal
can't
27,
offset
it can-
expenditures.
in 27, it could fund some capital investment, which we then wouldn't have to borrow, which means we lower the operating.
But does it stay in the water and sewer?
Yeah.
Yes, it has.
Oh, it does, okay.
Or it could just be used for ratepayer relief in fiscal 27, if it's $1 million surplus, right?
Yes,
Yeah,
or
that's interesting.
the true rate relief would be, the rate increase won't be as much.
Yes, yeah, that, exactly,
Yeah.
exactly.
Because eventually the spending is gonna catch up to.
Agreed. You said option S10 for the sewer is the least worst or least onerous for potential future years?
For sewer, yes.
The best of the worst, okay. All right, got it.
Yes,
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out, wait a minute.
Is there a common philosophy among this committee on what you just stated? I mean, I'm more school of thought of bite the bullet now.
I'm with you on that one.
I don't think anybody's disagreeing with that at all.
Yeah.
I think what we're trying to,
But
but
it's
the
also,
reality is like,
it might not pass.
yeah, this select board is like,
Exactly.
yeah, we're not gonna tell somebody that we're raising the rate by 10%. So,
Well,
It'd
the
be
options,
unfortunate if a unanimous committee decision was not considered.
if the board were to vote against that, then they'd have to adjust property taxes to make up the difference. Right? And then if you don't, right, and if you don't, so my issue with it is that I've been in this committee since 2022, and we've always used this 3-year thing. That's the methodology, and now we're saying, oh, well, because of this, that, and the other, we're gonna change the methodology. Because we don't want to have an increase that's past a certain percentage. But next year, whoever is here is gonna be arguing the same thing.
Yes.
And I don't, you know. I mean, you're in the rating business, I think,
No,
right?
I'm an investor.
An investor, right? But if you have a utilities, the utilities don't go and fund the DPUs and say every year, no, this year we're gonna use this and next year we're gonna do that, right? They've got a consistent
Right.
approach. So. Anyway, I know it doesn't,
What about, what about number alternative now, alternative 81? So it uses the best of the worst of the sewers, but it sticks to water too, and the net increase would be 6%.
And works. Eighty-one.
Oh, I feel like one of these, okay, I understand not wanting to do both. I understand the ramifications, but I think maybe it might be wise to at least focus on one or the other in terms of going, you know, one of the strongest changes that are options that are in the proposal.
81 makes a lot of sense.
Well, John and John. So in all those years that when you had to make that recommendation, you just never had to recommend something that was so big that
Not as
it
stressful.
was an issue?
We never did, yeah, it's gonna-
Except last year, right? Was last year pretty hefty with the sewer? Oh, we had a big one last year with sewer.
I don't think it was above 5%.
Okay.
Yeah,
I think there was one year we didn't even have a rate increase, right?
Oh, we had multiple years. of
yeah,
rate
no,
increase.
I mean,
Yeah, I remember
we
that.
were right in the gravy train
Feels like
for a
ancient
while.
history.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
last year's increase was 5.9%.
On a
Oh,
blended basis.
yeah, overall. Yeah, yeah, we didn't raise, we were giving money back.
Yes.
The issue with water too is though, it's not, also not perfect because it doesn't get rid of the subsidy for step 3, right? But it does cut in half, basically, or close to half. And it cuts the other two.
I mean, have to bring it out.
Well, no, I'm looking at this, I'm sorry.
No, but I'm saying like,
Oh, yeah, no, that's what I was thinking, I mean,
I mean, it's a little hefty on this side of it, but I wonder if you took the W two and you just remove what's left in three on W two? What was the subsidy left in?
oh, yeah, sure, so, here,
Okay.
there are, here's base, here's current. So they are, in step 3 is cutting meaningfully.
So, and that's not a huge step, so I wonder if you just zeroed that one out, if it's a big deal, that would affect the overall net 5.
Well, I think Dave said it was like 20-something% is required this year, right, that's step 3 subsidy.
Yes, you need a 20% increase in step 3.
So it would have to be a 9% increase for steps 1, 2, and 4, and then a 20%.
Increase for step 3 or
Yeah, which
negate the subsidy.
presumably then that would exceed, it would be in the green. And
The only reason I ask that is because if the usage in step 3 is so low, as we know, I wonder if you're, because the overall number for the alternative you were recommending was only, what, 6%?
Yeah,
I wonder if that step 3 being as low as it is, if you still negated that subsidy in 3, I wonder if it would swing that overall rate that much higher. I don't think it would.
I don't know. Yeah, I mean, I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it is small. But, and maybe tackle that though in fiscal 27.
I just if you wanted to hold one of those.
No, I hear you on that too. Then you made progress also on sewer 10, right? I mean, so you do cut the subsidy.
Yeah. So what we were saying there, Dave, was like taking water to, you'd increase step 1, step 2, 9.5, and step 4, but then you still roll off the subsidy, that 20% on
Yeah.
3. And how that alternative would it, because step 3 is such a small usage step,
Yeah.
would it really not make it? That's 6% much higher.
I know I've asked this before, I just completely forgot the answer. What are the entities that are typical step 3 customers? What are we talking about, large homes or
And
small?
big homes that shoot up a
Or
little
small
more too.
businesses?
Oh,
small businesses, step three to step, well, almost all businesses are in step four. It's just maybe an office space or something, that's step three. If it's a step three. Step three residents, those are family of four, if with two kids, they're gonna be in step three.
Or two kids.
I mean, that. was
I have
what
two
we had.
kids, we're not.
Yeah, no,
How old are they?
Huh?
How old are they?
2 and 4.
Well,
No, I know.
Yeah.
With teenagers.
Yeah,
I know exactly.
Yeah, wait till you're putting a timer in the shower.
Yeah, wait till you get them older.
Yeah.
High schoolers, they want to take multiple showers a day, laundry.
Yeah,
Yeah,
It's all good now.
I don't think my boys will wanna take multi-hour showers, so I'll be alright.
Oh, I don't know, you never know. Mine
Yeah.
did 45 minutes once, my boys. In high school, my son did multiple outfits, always in the laundry, multiple showers.
Dishwasher runs twice a day.
Oh, yeah.
That's true, we're already there, yeah.
So. What do we want the five to be?
Let's go.
So the original five were 10, 25, 61, 87, 78. With 10 and 25 not having a chance. And then we talked 15, 16, and 81.
And 81. Yep. So,
No, we also said 28, right? No,
I had listed at 78.
That was one of the original five.
there are a lot of numbers being thrown. I'm already like, actually,
alternate 28, I don't even remember.
No.
it being raised.
no, it was water 2 and
Water two
Sewer.
and sewer 10, so what's water? two,
sewer 10, got it, water 2, sewer 10, is 81.
Yeah,
Okay,
that's
81, got it.
Yeah.
And then add between 15 and 16, which we next one, I think.
I think it was, next 15,
Okay.
yeah, the 10% rather than 10.2.
it's 15, 16, no.
15, no, 16 possibly. And then out of 10 and 25, would you want to strike one of those?
I think I'm of the mindset that jumping to a flat rate across all steps is a
I'd strike
big
10,
shift.
yeah.
All right, so then
What?
You strike
It's a
10.
big shift. No, that's 25.
That's, I was gonna say, that's 25, that's.
Sewer 3.
Yeah, I agree.
Or 25.
I think, yeah. I
So then-
personally think that's like more of a non-starter than an 8% rate increase.
So then that leaves you with 10, 61, 87, 78.
Say that one more time?
So it leaves us with 6, 10, 61, 87, 78,
And 16.
16, and 81.
Yes, yes. 10, 16, 61, 78, 80, 81, 87.
Correct. So you just,
Harold, for Harold's sake, it's W2, this primary, that was the primary one we wanted to have in there.
Well, I think one of the two.
Water two or water eight, well, it's W2 or W8,
Yes.
okay. And then
S2 or S10.
S2 or S10, sometimes it's easy to boil that down real
Yeah.
quick, S2 and S10, okay.
And alternative 10 is unlikely.
so do you want to just strike that and then there's your 5? 16, 61, 78, 81, and 87,
Agreed.
16,
61,
61, Yep.
78,
78,
81,
81.
and 87.
Okay, so I have one issue or commentary on that one. So it would be 78, which is a net increase of 3.7%. And then, well, 87 is 5, so it's, there was another one that was significantly lower. Was it 61, I think? Yeah, that's 4.7. You know, by presenting those,
I hear you.
it might be more tempting to adopt those.
Yeah.
And I don't, is that in the best interest of the finances of the enterprises?
So do we just want to go with 3?
Well, that's,
I'm just throwing that
Yeah.
out. I'm not saying the strikers, I'm just saying if those are probably
Yeah,
more
I mean,
likely to be adopted.
My view is, I think we do need to go higher. I think if you go the easy option, the easy button's gonna probably win.
Mhm.
They can choose or not to take the recommendation, so I would, yeah, if we've narrowed it down to that 5 and the committee agrees that lower is too tempting, then I'd say strike it and recommend 3. And that's what we've typically done.
What's wrong with 10? Why did we throw that out?
Right.
I don't know if we had,
Why did you not list 10? It's 10.9%.
I think 78 should be struck. It's just, I don't think it's enough. It's just below last year's increase.
Why are we not listing 10?
I'm sorry about that.
I think alternative in the hunt, right?
It wasn't.
Yeah, no, I just, based on what Dave's saying, it sounds like. But 78, I guess my question is, what's the? Is it serving the best purpose to be recommending that one if it's not gonna, I mean, like I said, I think that rate increase is below what it was last year.
Yes,
And that's not. Good idea. Getting sense to do that. Yeah, I don't know if we should. 78.
But Interdig is another sewer option that's not in your top 2 sewer options too. So your top 2 sewer options were S, 2 and.
Yeah,
I don't
but
know
look,
what
if you look at sewer option number 9, it's also, you know, the lower target number, so it's gonna be more risk with fiscal 27.
So, striking 78, the 5 alternatives are 10, 16, 61, 81, and 87. Basically means we're either gonna have an option W2 or a WA, or a sewer 2, sewer 10, and then the one outlier is sewer 7. So,
So yes, so can we talk about alternative 61 then?
Yep.
Because the others, I think. You know, it makes sense. As options. 61 is W7.
someone just increasing our steps 5%.
Oh, got it. Okay.
What's your, Dave, what's your opinion on individually speaking, sewer 7? The, you know, positive pros and cons, sewer 7. Water 8.
Why would you not just go to sewer 8? Why would you go to sewer 7? It's just 6% versus 5%.
Yeah.
I mean, so 70 to me feels more logical than 61 in all cases.
70.
Yeah, alternative 70.
Yeah, that's your point.
Dispatch 61, put 70.
Yeah, I mean, the 3 I was narrowing in on were 16, 70, and 87.
16,
70.
70, and 87.
If we work with those and have. Impacts and stuff
And you can also show for 10, and what's the other one that's out there, 87,
10, 16, 70, 81, 87.
got it. So I think, yeah, okay, that's fine. And then you can show projected percentage
27.
increases, yeah, that would be, as a consequence from.
Yep.
That would be.
So what are we looking at again?
Alternative 10, alternative 16, alternative 70, alternative 81, alternative 87.
Hopefully I would take 87 off because you're giving them the easy button. And it's,
We still have.
but we still have next week, right? We're gonna look at this, so maybe you do just keep it with those 5.
Yeah,
And then
now
we narrow it to 3.
Yeah. And digest and see how we. I like the fact that you kept 10 and 16 kind of at the top of the list.
Can I, so Mr. Chairman, can I ask you a question? Is, the memo that Dave sent out, is that included in the proceedings here, you know, the memo you sent explaining why we're looking at 2026?
Yes, that will be, will be incorporated into the letter to the select board as well.
But in this, for this meeting, since it was included in the package, it should be part of the
Yeah.
package and in the minutes.
Yep.
So what I'm asking is that be included in the minute.
That whole thing that went out to you is all.
yeah, so the email will be in an
It's
attachment.
all part of the official.
For the next meeting, it'll be an attachment, that email.
What do you mean by that?
Just print out the email and just attach it.
No, what I wanted in the official minutes of the meeting, I want a reference to this in the official minutes of this meeting.
They're attached, as attached, any document we refer to is attached to the minutes.
Okay.
So as a document, I list all the documents. I can list Dave's email as a document.
Okay. So just a recap. All of them except 10 are based on 2026.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Wait,
Yes.
or no, we have.
I just want to further clarify. Parts of each one, some of them address the 3-year average. 10 is the only one that addresses the 3-year on both.
On both sides, that's what I meant, yeah.
I think regardless of what we recommend too, I think it would be important for the select board to remind them that there were years where there were 0 rate increases too. Yeah, I think.
That's why I think also having the comparison of where we, with these options, where you stand against towns, because that tells a story too. Wellesley and Dedham didn't have to.
What was the deal with Framingham? I don't remember talking about that. Is it just because of low density? And they're having to spread the costs across fewer people? Framingham's notably higher than.
Oh, several, well, everyone is going through the same issues as their rate imbalance and their high consumers are disappearing. Manufacturing and different industries, so, places that, places like Waltham, Framingham, Ashland have counted on to basically keep rate low for the residents, are disappearing. Anyways, next meeting,
Then next week.
next week, the only day that works for me is Thursday, the 29th. Or Tuesday seems to work for you all. Tuesday does not work for you all,
Wednesday doesn't work for me.
and Wednesday does not work for you.
Thursday works for me.
Thursday works for me.
I think I can get Thursday. to work.
I can only be
I won't
Zoom.
be here.
Can you do Zoom?
Yeah, maybe, depending on the time.
6. Yeah.
I think so. I've checked my flights. So
What about Monday? Is that too soon?
Monday, 26th is Memorial Day.
Oh.
It's a holiday.
You guys are no fun. Come on.
Yeah.
Means you're off work, so
I'll save you some barbecue.
10 AM.
Well, Monday's a good day, you have Monday the second,
I'm sorry,
Monday the second.
of June?
Mm.
Well, so it goes back to the question I asked a while ago now, will that leave us enough time? To continue to see if we can't, if there's no agreement, if there's more questions, if we meet on, would that be cutting it too close? I guess, because typically we meet like 3 times, right? Or we have.
But this was a.
But you did have the meeting in March, where we're
Oh,
all,
that's-
so
yeah.
technically, you've already had two.
Okay.
This was the meeting we had, just in case you needed the third one.
I can zoom in next Thursday. It's fine.
Okay.
Thursday, the 29th, probably.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
So.
Catherine, are you here?
Yes, I am.
Okay, motion to adjourn the meeting. No other questions?
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Who seconded that?
Maybe 1 second is good.
Yeah.
When's the date? The actual move?
June 16th,
Okay. so
June 18th, I guess, technically. Yeah.
You're